It's hot. It's hot. Welcome back to Reset Your Mind. Overhauling toxic thoughts. This will be day 4. The devotional portion is titled Fix Your Thoughts. When we fill our thoughts with the right things, the wrong ones have no room to enter. Joyce Meyer. Testing our thoughts and learning to take them captive is a huge part of the mental battle we have with our thoughts. So, when you can learn to do that as a regular practice, we will gain control over our thoughts. Read that again. Testing our thoughts and learning to take them captive. Not just let them run through your brain and then move on, but take them captive. It's an active practice. Is a huge part of the mental battle we have with our thoughts. So, when we can learn to do that as a regular practice, we will gain control over our thoughts. That's not a you might. You absolutely will with regular practice. But what if we choose to be more productive with our thoughts in order to prevent reacting later on? There will still be thoughts that have to be tested and taken captive, of course, for we are not perfect. When we can, however, choose to follow through with Paul's exhortation in Colossians 3:2, which says, set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. In setting our minds on things above, we will have less thoughts that need testing and being taken captive. Think about that for a minute and understand how true that is. If your mind is perpetually and consistently and constantly set on things above, there will just be less toxicity in your mind because you will be set on something that does not contain toxicity. Therefore, none of that toxicity is going to seep into your mind to begin with. So you're going to have less damage you have to work through to begin with. I hope that makes sense. When we set our minds, we are striving for something and directing our mind toward a certain thing. The verse says we shouldn't set our minds on earthly things. Those earthly things usually distract us and cause our thoughts to keep us from God's best. Understand that truth. There are plenty of things we see every day that are out of control. Oh my God, that's an understatement. It's an understatement in 2023. But much of what we see can be prevented. That is also true. What we put in front of our eyes is a big deal. If you feel that you have too many toxic thoughts, what is it that could be causing them? Things we've already talked about in previous days. Could it be things on TV? Shocker. Social media, even more of a shocker. Or the news. Arguably one of the worst, depending on what news channels you're watching, and I'm not going to say anything else. It's wise to analyze the things we are viewing daily and ask God to show us what would be a good thing to decrease or eliminate altogether. Let's talk about this for just a hot second. What you watch with your eyes, what you allow to enter your brain through your ears, meaning what you listen to, these things will shape you whether you like it or not. I don't know if that's a hot take. I really hope it's not when I'm talking to Christians, because I feel like that's a truth we should all know. But in our society, it's not viewed that way. Except for kind of now, if you're on the conservative end of things. There's a lot of things going on right now with TV shows, with TV producers, and things within that realm where we're finally becoming and seemingly aware that good example would just be stuff with kids. On YouTube Kids, on Disney, in real life. I'm not going to mention it, but you probably know what I'm talking about. We are allowing children to view things that children should not be viewing, even within kids' TV programs. This is going to wire the way a child thinks. It's going to wire the way you think, and you are an adult who should have control over your mind. Children do not. Children are sponges. Children are going to become whatever it is they watch. If all they watch is something where people dress a certain way, they are going to grow up and more than likely dress that way unless the people in their actual life is a greater influence on them than what they're watching on TV. We have this phenomena happening right now, starting mostly with COVID, but definitely before that, of iPad kids is what they're calling it, where more parents are working at home now ever since COVID. But even before that, a lot of parents are working a lot more than they ever have just to get by. So what do? They hand an iPad to a kid and then, don't bother me. Let me work. The kid has YouTube Kids, right? It's got to be safe. I can show you tons of studies where journalists have made children YouTube accounts and have just seen, what do they give kids? What do they feed kids when the parents aren't around? It is horrific and shocking. And the kids consume that without understanding. So as an adult, you do have a conscious mind much more than a child. So you are able to control more and hear something and say, oh, that's not right. I need to get away from that. Kids don't have that. So as a parent, you need to be mindful of that. But as a parent, you also need to take care of yourself. If all you're watching is horrific stuff on TV, maybe you're so good at controlling your mind that none of that becomes toxic for you. Cool. But could you ever argue that it's good for you? I would argue no, you can't. And that is also not you set on things above, right? So you're opening yourself up to more toxicity than is necessary. Does that mean not to watch fun stuff? Like I know a lot of people watch Game of Thrones and stuff like that. There's a lot of inappropriate things within that show. Again, I would argue no. I watched the show. It was a great show. I rarely watch TV, but it's got to be really good for me to watch that stuff. But I am very mindful with what I listen to. 99% of what I listen to is like political stuff because I want to know what's going on. And then theology, different people's theological opinions on things. That's what I fill myself with. I know I'm probably weird. I'll watch TV with my wife sometimes. But even then, I don't like watching trash. It's just, it doesn't do anything good for you. It doesn't do anything positive. So be mindful of what you're doing. And now that I've ranted for way too long, be mindful of what your kids are doing too. Just please. As like a side note, as a parent, you are responsible for what your kids are consuming. 100%. Vet things before you give it to them. Please, please, for the love of God. Much like we need to watch what we put in front of our eyes, we also need to consider what is going into our ears. Music. Podcasts nowadays, right? What we hear affects our thoughts just as much as what we see. Have you noticed what type of music, books, or podcasts possibly cause toxic thoughts in your mind? Are there things you need to include, not just remove, that will build you up and help create healthy thoughts instead? I'll be honest, I listen to some podcasts that are not positive, but I limit it because I fully recognize they're not positive. Instead of focusing on and setting our sights on things that could cause toxic thoughts, let's be proactively mindful of what we choose to put in front of us. When we choose things that honor God and keep us pure in heart, we will have less thoughts to test and take captive. So if you're somebody who's mentally weak, and I don't at all mean that in a negative way, some people they don't have very much control on their thoughts. If that's you, be very, very, very mindful of what you consume. Genuinely, like from the bottom of my heart, be mindful because it's going to affect you subconsciously. If you have intense control over your thoughts, then you can be a little bit less mindful. But still, I would argue it's not positive. What tends to be your struggle? What you watch or what you listen to? List the biggest thing you need to eliminate from what you normally watch or listen to. Write it down. Chances are you already know what it is. I'm sure you do. Give it up for 21 days and see what a difference you see in your thoughts. I would honestly really, really urge you to do that. I know most people aren't going to do it. Just that's the reality. I'm a pessimist, I guess. But if you can do that, seriously, try to do it. Colossians 3:2, set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. Hebrews 1 through 3. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and the perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endures the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. What a beautiful verse. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. I feel like I ranted enough, so we're going to end right there. Try to do the homework, though. If you can give it up for 21 days, that'd be phenomenal. Phenomenal. See you guys for day 5.